All right, welcome to Pod to Win the Game, All Juice Team Edition with Charles McDonald and myself, Charles Robinson. We are rocking the new All Juice tees, the blacks. Yes, very nice. I like the black ones. They're sharp. Yes, just so everybody knows, a lot of listeners probably have checked out the breakingtea.com /Terez link to get your All Juice tee and hoodies. Well, we refreshed the brand for the 9th annual All Juice team and hoodie. Remember, check those out, and all the proceeds from purchases go to support the Terez Paylor Scholarship at Howard University. Again, check out the new design. I think it's pretty dope. Hopefully, people like it, get it in time. I think you can still get it in time for the draft. So please, everybody who's listening now, maybe refresh that look. And these are, so far, my favorites. I mean, the first is the classic.
They're nice, man.
They're crisp, right? I mean, it's just clean.
I wasn't sure how it was going to look like in person, but I love it in person. Like once I put it on, it's like it's a nice T-shirt. It's a good logo. The size is good. I got no complaints here.
The iconic glasses, I like it. It's a
good
look. So definitely check that out. We'd appreciate it if people could once again re-up on the All Juice tees. But again, as I said, it's the All Juice Team Edition. We're going to get to that. We get real quick. We got to hit on the Jalen Hurts contract. Jalen Hurts, mega deal. 5 years, $255 million. There's a lot of ins and outs of what this contract looks like. We're going to get into it more Wednesday, but we at least need to talk about it and the impact. So basically, it puts the guaranteed money now when you look at the overall contracts. Really, that line that has solidified behind Deshaun Watson now is $179, $180 million. Like if you're going to sign a quarterback to a long-term deal, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, everybody else coming up, Trevor Lawrence down the line, you're looking at $50 million plus for the elites. And all those guys I mentioned will sign for elite deals. So they will all be $50 million APY minimum, $180 million true guarantees minimum. Cash flow might change, fluctuate, whatever, other little details to get it done. Well, we'll talk about Lamar Jackson, how it impacts him. But first and foremost, Jalen secured the bag, and I don't think I've ever seen, in my entire history of covering the NFL, the progression of a player go from, I'm a backup, I was brought in under like, hey, why do we draft this guy? We got Carson Wentz. Second year, I'm a starter. Third year, we're in the Super Bowl. Fourth year, I got the bag of bags. I'm the highest paid player in the NFL. Like, that trajectory is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's amazing. Because, Jalen Hurts is one of those guys I feel like we've really been able to watch his entire career up to this point. Like even starting back at Alabama, where he started as a freshman and then was ended up replaced by Tua Tagovailoa, like in the national championship game, pretty much due to an injury. And then, he scores that touchdown and his college career is kind of in flux, has to transfer to Oklahoma, balls out at Oklahoma, ends up a second-round pick where people are like, we'll see what happens with this down the road. Maybe it turns out to be something. Maybe it doesn't. And now we're here, man. Like $255 million. I would love to know like the people who, back when Jalen Hurts come out in college, like that had this pegged for him because this is just incredible. Like from start to finish, freshman year at Alabama to now, it's like one of the more inspiring stories that I've seen in the NFL. And I really hope they can keep that core around him because he's been a whole lot of fun to watch and obviously just led them to the Super Bowl. So it's hard to say that, he shouldn't get this money. And I think that this is going to end up working out for the Eagles if they can continue to keep drafting well.
Yeah, and this is very much when you talk about being able to get this deal done. When we were at the Super Bowl, I spent some time with Eagles owner Jeffrey Lurie, and this was very much a Lurie inspired. Like, look, it's Howie Roseman, the general manager. It's Howie inspired, how he wanted to get it done. But Lurie, you need an owner at this point to step in and go, do it. Whatever. Like, okay, we're going to do it. Right. We're going to this is an extinction level event contract if it goes wrong. Okay. It is an asteroid. It is a species killer if it goes wrong. Okay. If it goes right, hey, great. Lives up to it. Make all, Super Bowls and, You do everything you can to maximize all those spots around him, but a couple of things become premium now. Not only your cap people, everybody, and they've got great cap people. They've been through this before with different scenarios, so that's great. But not only that, your personnel department, you got to have tip-top people because once you sign a contract like this, it all becomes getting the supplemental pieces around him out of the draft You're not going to be signing a bunch of guys. You're going to build this team through the draft and add basically every single accessory he could have on a rookie contract, and then try to figure out how to juggle those. If you have hits, figure out how to juggle those guys when it comes time for free agency. So, I mean, I'm very curious to see what they do now with the 10th pick, because that's an asset that is going to be very important. You got to hit on that pick, I think, especially considering some of the defensive pieces you've lost. But they went for it on this one, and props to Jalen Hurts. Props to Nicole Lynn, who's the agent with Clutch that signed this deal. Unbelievable deal. Like, what a feather in your cap to sign. Anytime you sign a quarterback who's 3 years into the richest deal in NFL history in terms of pay, APY, you're gonna do some great business. She already has up until this point. She's going to secure a couple bags this off season. Quinnen Williams, another one. Wow, it is a true stunner.
Yeah, now we just got to see if they can, continue to build this roster. And like you said, the 10th pick ends up being really interesting. I almost wonder if you look at this and you say, hey, like, as things have gotten more, or as things are going to get more expensive with Jalen's price tag on the roster, do we want to trade down from 10, pick up a couple more assets just so we have more, hacks at it while Jalen becomes more and more expensive? But it adds a little wrinkle to the strategy now, and now we get to see what's next for the Eagles and what's next for Jalen.
Got to talk about Lamar, real quick. This, I don't know what this, to me, this is it. This is the template. And the only thing that the Ravens could argue, you have to match this deal. Okay. And the only thing that the Ravens could argue is, Lamar, has not led us to the Super Bowl. Okay. Jalen Hurts is a Super Bowl, caliber quarterback, and Lamar can counter, well, I'm a league MVP. So you want to go that route. But to me, this is it. This is the basis. So if you're the Ravens, you go to Lamar and you say, this is the deal that's on the table. This is what we consider the market leader, not the outlier in Deshaun Watson. Can we get this done at this deal? Now we'll bump you to, the APY. We'll give you the $1 extra or whatever it is to make you the highest paid player in the NFL until these other quarterbacks all come in, and they'll all become the highest paid players in the game. Burrow's going to become the highest paid player. Herbert's going to become the highest paid player. Lawrence is going to become the highest paid player unless something happens. It's just how elite quarterbacks go. You reset the market over and over again. This is it. Like, if Lamar looks at this and the Ravens put it out there in those terms, and you can't come to an agreement there, I don't know that you're ever going to be able to come to an agreement at that point.
At least if I was Lamar, I don't really know how he's looking at it at this point, but man, if someone throws that offer in front of you, it's like, it's kind of hard to say no, especially if you don't have any agent kickbacks to give to anybody. So I guess my thing with the Lamar contract at this point is, what's going to be the number that makes you say yes? Because, like, I understand that Jalen Hurts' money is not fully guaranteed, and I still think Lamar should go for a fully guaranteed contract, but $180 million guaranteed functionally, like that, you don't have to pick up a finger again for the rest of your life. I just wonder how high does the money have to get before he just says, all right, I'm gonna lock it on this, because this Jalen Hurts money, it's pretty serious, man.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Pretty good.
We're going to definitely see the $60 million APY quarter. And by the way, Patrick Mahomes, there's an adjustment that's got to be coming on that deal. Like, he is going to be dramatically far. I don't know if it'll happen right after this deal or it'll be the next series of deals, but I would think at some point there will be some level of adjustment that happens in the Mahomes deal. Maybe he doesn't reset the market or whatever, but he's locked in for a really long time. And I know he did it, and this was all coming and everybody knew it, but I don't know. It doesn't seem feasible for me for him to play out that entire 10-year contract at the terms that it came in at. So he would have to be like an all-time unnecessarily good guy to let that happen. I think it would probably, maybe if we get to the point where the disparity is like $10 million a year APY, then you start to go, okay, we got to, let's talk to Lamar about this and adjust it, particularly given the success you've already had. So, all right, let's throw it to ad break real quick. We'll get to our sponsors, come back on the other side with the All Juice team. We're going to hit this hard. It's going to be going up in the next 24 hours, so make sure you watch the site. But first, let's hear from our advertisers. All right, welcome back. All Juice team time. You and I have been working on this for a while. Third year for me, most difficult team I've done, most disagreement I've had, probably most guaranteed team that I'm going to hear from people that I talk to for this in terms of coaches, GMs, personnel guys, that they don't like picks. That they're definitely going to be some players on here where they go, how could you possibly put that player on here? Only because that's how the calls went. It was like you love him or you hated him. It was one or the other. I felt like a lot of this team was built that way. Real quick before we get into the selections, just sort of, we know it's about effort, attitude, performance, right? That was Terez's really zone when he went after this team. You had the goods. That's what he used to say about guys that made the All-Juice team. And hence the T-shirt. Your experience, your first year working on it, what you thought of the process of putting it together the way Terez did in terms of like the different tiers. You're not just picking an all-star team. You're picking a team that stacks up in different tiers of the draft, which means you're going to have 7th round picks are going to make the all juice team. 6th round picks, a priority free agent made the all juice team.
Dude, a couple weeks ago, I'm sitting up at night and I'm asking like, because I kind of got lucky where I have, some buddies that I grew up with have made it to, NFL scout level and started to matriculate up. So got lucky there. And I've been able to ask some guys about certain prospects. But I remember when I was up at like 11:30 one night and watching like tape for this linebacker from TCU who's projected to go in the 6th round. And I was sitting there thinking, dude, you used to do all of this by yourself every year? Every year by yourself? It's crazy. Like the amount of work that goes into it. And this is a 2-man squad. And it still took us like weeks to put this together. So I just think like going back and looking at what he was able to do by himself, like the amount of time that he spent on this is absolutely incredible. And I think when you look at some of the past teams, especially like the quarterback picks, they've aged pretty well. So I think that's where we had our probably most contentious disagreement there with the quarterback stuff. But outside of that, it was a lot of fun to put together. And I just still think the coolest part is just how people are still receptive to the project, even now, since it's been a couple of years since he passed. It's been a cool thing to be a part of, because I know it's always something that I read even before working here, when I knew Terez back in the day. And now to be able to be a part of it it's awesome.
Yeah. It's the challenge has been just the best part of it. And, shout out to Pete Thamel, Eric at home, who have worked the teams the last couple of years with myself. And obviously it was great to have you aboard. And I wish I had known going into it, like how much disagreement there was going to be, because I was in misery at times in my desk where I'm just sitting there and I'm looking at names, and like, we'll get to who the priority free agent was. The priority free agent was like, some people were like just railing against the idea that we could even have him on the team as a priority free agent. And there were others that were like, oh no, he's not even a priority free agent. Like that guy could be maybe he'll be like a 5th round pick. And there's like, like he's good enough to come off the board earlier in the draft than you even think. And I'm just like, God, what am I doing here? This is losing my mind. And we approached it differently. You broke down a lot of film. You hit it from a film standpoint. I hit it from I'm not doing the film on these guys. You guys tell me, evaluators, you help me. Let's cobble together a list of names and you tell me what's right and what's wrong on this. So I like that we approached it differently. The worst part about this, though, I'm telling you, was that a lot of the elite positions, it's such a wonky year. You're dealing with, the ideal quarterback without the resume, the ideal like athlete quarterback without the resume, the ideal great quarterback without the perfect like physical box checking stuff. A ton of receivers who are all like little guys, and then some big guys that don't really fit the absolute true mold. An offensive lineman who could play like literally anywhere. Like it's just, we didn't have any of it was rare. We didn't have a ton of the hammer lock. This player's in there, this player. And that, I think, maybe Jalen Carter, you could say. But I thought that the resume, the length of the resume, and then sort of the red flags, everything that sort of happened this offseason, I thought was enough to just sort of nudge him off of how we picked, the tiers. we're gonna go position by position. We'll do a little depth on some players, not everybody, but you have to understand the way the team's chosen is in tiers. So the way Terez would break this down is you're picking guys that are in tier 1, which is like top 10, tier 2, 10 to like low 20s, tier 3, the bottom third of the first round. 2 guys, then you're picking a guy at the top of the second round, bottom of the second round, top of third, bottom of third, and then eventually you get to where it's just 4th, 5th, 6th. You're taking 2 from each round, a priority free agent at the end. You also have to understand that as you go through this, there's going to be some variation on where these guys actually end up get drafted. Some people are going to go, oh, there's no way this guy's going to get drafted. We'll say we're thinking he's going to go in the 5th. He'll go in the 3rd. It happens. I mean, there's nothing. We're going to do the best we can with the information that we have at hand. I mean, I won't even say right now, and he's not on the team, I won't even say Bijan Robinson is an absolute hammer lock to go in the first round. Yes, he is, but no, he isn't, because we just never know how the NFL works.
Right.
So,
and you know what? I'll take a more disrespectful tone to this.
Okay,
you know
absolutely.
You people who get upset at these mock drafts and where guys are listed on this stuff. How about you sit down and just go ahead and rank 200 guys and make the calls and figure out where people are going? Because, look, I can call on prospect X and someone's going to say he's a top 30 prospect, and I can call someone else on the same guy and they'll say, I wouldn't take him in the top 100.
Right.
It is what it is. So, you know what? If you're going to cry about this, go outside. How about that?
I like the disrespectful tone. I mean, it is true. We don't even get, all these people in the league don't even agree. So the odds of getting readers to agree is off the charts. So
last year, Nakobe Dean made the All Juice team in the first round, which seemed like a perfectly reasonable thing to happen before the draft. And he ended up going in the 3rd round. It is what it is. It's different.
The Kobe Dean pick, by the way, is going to pay off next season. I'm just saying that. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
Just wait, because he's going to get some PT next season. And I think they're super. Him and Jordan Davis, the Eagles are amped about those guys. So
same.
Let's start out with quarterback. You and I, we started our contention with the quarterback. And it wasn't, I don't think it was, I think we both understandably came to a point where I saw your advantage, you saw mine. We picked Bryce Young out of Alabama. Go ahead and walk us through sort of, you were in the Anthony Richardson camp. I was in the Bryce Young camp. We had to kind of hammer out how we wanted to approach the team, starting right off from the quarterback pick. It feels like often quarterback picks are difficult like this. We had the conversation about Malik Willis last year versus Kenny Pickett. This is where we ended up, though. Kind of walk people through this pick, though.
So basically, to get a better sense of like what the All Juice team had been in the past, I just went back and looked through some of the older, collections of it. So I just had noticed that Terez himself had, he had geared towards, and I missed like one part of this. Like he had geared towards guys who were supreme athletes, like Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, even a miss in there, Paxton Lynch, top 1% type of athletes when it came to quarterbacks. So I just like, well, the clear obvious guy in this draft that would fit that billing is Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. But I don't know. The Will Levis thing didn't excite me as much as watching Anthony Richardson when I watched him play. So I thought, just based on like the straight physical archetype of the past all-Juice team quarterbacks, Anthony Richardson fit that the most. But then you made the point that there was also the production aspect. Lamar Jackson won a Heisman, obviously one of the greatest college football players of all time. Patrick Mahomes was thrown for, so many yards that Cliff Kingsbury ended up getting a head coaching job. Even Paxton Lynch was productive during his time in Memphis. So, I think that there are reasons for Anthony Richardson's production not being good, but it's still not good. Like it's still just, it doesn't hold a candle to the other guys in this class. So that is what ended up getting bumped. And I think that was probably the right decision at the end of the day, just given what the actual, what the players in the old all-Juice teams had actually produced on the field.
Right. I think if Richardson, if we had gone another year and Richardson had another year to put down a jump year, he has a great 1 year run. Remember, Kyler Murray made this team after winning the Heisman. He basically had 1 year of production, but it was supreme. Like it was, and again, I thought you're definitely right when you look at the history of quarterbacks. A lot of it was always Terez was leaning into where the position was going, not necessarily where it had previously been. my argument was just that Bryce Young is so special when you talk to people in the league in every single aspect, other than just physical stature. You know, he's on the edge of 6 foot, 195 pounds. You know, he's going to try and play in the league at 205. Maybe he gets a little bit bigger. Maybe you could argue that, hey, Alabama players, because of the state of the program, the way that they develop players, they tend to be a little bit toppy coming out of college, meaning they've topped out. Like they're not going to have, you know, exponentially huge growth at the NFL level, whereas Anthony Richardson could massive ceiling, right? But the thing about Bryce Young that I thought was really important was he had the resume, years of it. He had the leadership aspect of it. Really, I felt like other than the size, squarely put him into this. And then the art, obviously, look, the cognitive score, you know, which now that's become this huge deal now with quarterbacks. Well, he scored like a 98 in the what's it, R2, T2? R2? S2. I just skipped it. The cognitive score, the cognitive S2 score. I'm such an idiot. And I just had like huge conversations about this, and that's where my brain is at right now. But yeah, the S2 score was a 98, which is over Mahomes, Allen. You know, Purdy had the huge S2 score last year. We saw what he did. So he's processing fast. We know that, you know, from that score. So all in all, I thought it was a good pick. I thought we compromised. I appreciate we compromised, but I also will yield that, hey, Richardson, had he just had one more year, he very well could have ended up.
I feel like he'd been a slam dunk pick if he had one more year and like balled out.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see what happens. I think this is it's going to be good for us to get the number 1 overall pick though on the All Juice team.
You also see when you look at the how we built the team, we kind of tried to build it with a lot of earlier first round picks, and it influenced our tight end pick to protect our quarterback, right? We're trying to build a team. We want to protect Bryce Young, so we made sure to invest to protect him early on. Running back, do you want to go into the running back pick?
Yeah, I went with Tyjae Spears from Tulane, and I think he finished in the one of our 3rd round range slots, which I think is fair for him. I don't think he's one of these guys that's going to end up, you know, being a 300 or 250 plus carry kind of guy in the NFL, but man, he is explosive. Like I think the game that sold me, and I know it's kind of a bowl game, so whatever, grain of salt. The USC game where he just went off and looked like the best player on the field, you know, against a team like USC, which I think is pretty impressive even in the state that USC is in right now. Elusive, tough, physical, finishes runs. I think the only thing that kind of, you know, cramps his NFL projection a little bit is probably the size. Not the biggest back, but you know, if you can tell me I can put him with another guy who can like take some goal line carries, I think he's a really exciting guy. And anytime you can be like a walking big play, I kind of think that's what being on the All Juice team is about, especially like when you look at some of these skill position spots. And then like if you're going to talk about attitude part of the team, you don't really see too many small guys like lowering their shoulders and trying to run over linebackers and stuff. And, you know, as a caveman former football player, that's the stuff that really excited me. So he ended up on here as a running back.
Yeah, and running back was a tough position this year. It really was. A lot of just, you know, because if you're not doing Bijan, once you get past Bijan, it's a total argument over. Yeah, even Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama, there's an argument. There's like a downside argument for everybody. There's a, hey, he could be a sneaky steal argument for a ton of guys too. So it was not an easy position at all. I'll take wide receivers. I did 2 of the 3 wide receivers. We ended up taking, and wide receiver, by the way, it was like, just because it's the micro minis this year. It's all these small receivers that normally you would just say, oh, they're all slot guys. But you had some guys who projected at slot, but played some outside at wide receiver. So our 3 wide receivers, the way they ended up coming off the board for us, we had one in the 11 to 20 tier, and that was Zay Flowers out of Boston College. We had another one at the top of the 3rd in A.T. Perry out of Wake Forest. And then our 4th rounder, we spent on one of our 4th rounders, we spent on Tank Dell out of Houston. So we got 2 smalls in Zay Flowers and Tank Dell, very, very different draft positions. That is because, number one, Tank Dell's really small. Unbelievable. Like in one-on-one coverage, you're screwed. You watch him at the Senior Bowl, he just chewed guys up and spit them out. everybody was saying that guy is destroying everybody in practice. He's uncoverable. The only problem is he probably played in college at like the 160 mark. Okay. That's just not, it's really tough at the NFL. You know, maybe get him to 170. Who knows how much that changes things. But I think, you know, you put him out there as part of 3 wide receiver set, you find a spot for him. And is he a massive usage, massive snap guy? Maybe not. Is there a lot of special teams ability there? Maybe some. It's going to be a later round pick, but I do think he can be a weapon for an NFL team. Zay Flowers, when you talk to teams about him, there was definitely some poor man's sort of Steve Smith comparisons. Like, hey, he's a competitor. When you put guys on him, he will compete for the ball. He wasn't somebody who just played in the slot. He had a really bad quarterback. Everybody seemed to agree that the quarterback play was subpar. I had a guy who said to me, like, I couldn't believe that he didn't enter the transfer portal. Like, he could have gone into the transfer portal and played almost anywhere in the Power 5 and put up huge numbers with a better quarterback. And maybe we're talking about this guy, even with the size, you know, approaching top 10, 12, you know, area. He's probably going to go somewhere bottom of the 20s, maybe somewhere 20 to 30, but just the guy that competes and fights for the ball. And then Perry, he's the size guy, right? 6'3", bigger templates, got the athleticism. But coming out of Wake Forest, you're like, okay, we have what we have in terms of the skill set, but we just don't know functionally if he can live up to the size and athleticism, just because of he went through Wake Forest and there just wasn't a ton of opportunity.
Yeah. It's a totally different game. I mean, I've gone on the Fantasy Football podcast with Matt Harmon the past few weeks, just breaking down some of the skill players in the draft. And when we talk about A.T. Perry, like, people have gotten on the Tennessee offense for not being like translatable for the NFL, but the Wake Forest offense is like even a step below that. It's
really,
it's
man,
like,
that's because
dude, it's like fake football, man. Like, especially the run game, man. Like, they're doing mesh point stuff that you don't even really see in high school football. But I will say with A.T. Perry, it's kind of rare to see, I think, big guys like be able to have the athleticism he has, and then also, to me, it was just like hand-eye coordination was pretty crazy. Like, some of the passes that he's able to reach out there and grab, just like and contort his body in different ways. I think even as he, you know, figures out how to adjust to the NFL game and learn to run some more NFL routes, like he's got a pretty easy avenue for at least to be just kind of like a big play merchant as a rookie before, you know, kind of settles down to a full-time role. So I think it's a big projection there in terms of like what he ends up looking out as, but from the start, I think he can be a productive player, like in a pretty confined role though.
All right, tight end is where you're going to see the first way we sort of leaned into, because this is a big tight end class. It offers a lot of varying things. You have the catch guys that are going to be more in the sort of Travis Kelce mode. You're going to have the blocking guys. You're going to have the mixed, you know, the guys that are good at both, top to bottom, deep class. We ended up taking our guy. It might have been a little bit of a stretch. We squeezed him into the bottom of the second. He might go earlier than that, but we might have fudged a little bit there. We'll see. It is a deep class, so I do think maybe that unexpectedly pushes some guys a little lower than you might think. But we pegged him somewhere between the 16th to the 32nd pick in the second round. Go ahead, roll out who it is and the why, which people are going to understand when they think of the quarterback pick.
It's Darnell Washington from University of Georgia. Go Dogs. This guy's a freak of nature. Like, he is an absolute freak of nature. Big dude. Yeah. 6'7", 265, but not slow. Like, he had a tremendous combine. And I think when you look at even the agility drills, it's not even just for his size. Like, just, I think he had one of the fastest 20-yard shuttle times in the entire class. At 265 pounds. So he's a special athlete, but what gets him on here is the blocking. Like, yep. I've look, as a Georgia fan, I've watched every single game this guy's played. I cannot think of a player that they have had that is as good as blocking in space as Darnell Washington. Not even just like of the tight ends, of every player, including offensive linemen on their roster. Dude, he is like just a demolition derby waiting to happen. I think if you want to get a sense of like what he looks like, or what his role can be like as he gets used to being an NFL receiver, just go watch the Oregon game from the start of the season last year. And he is making some ridiculous blocks in space where he's just decleating people. And he can move guys off the line of scrimmage like defensive end and stuff like that. So, look, I think if we're going to translate like what we have here into like an X and O's things, like let's look at it from the standpoint of, all right, we got Bryce Young, we got Zay Flowers, we got our big play merchant, we got A.T. Perry, another big play merchant. We're probably going to need some max protect to get in there. So if we need 6 to block, Darnell Washington is not a bad option as your 6th player. So let's try to get him in there. And then I know he's got some work to do as a receiver, but dude, he's 6'7", 265, and a freak athlete. Like you can just manufacture some opportunities for him there. I really like this pick the more I think about it. And maybe it's a stretch, but honestly today, I was doing a mock draft that's going live on, Yahoo sometime, Monday or Tuesday. And my first tight end didn't come off the board until pick 28. So
yeah, that could push these guys. Yeah.
Right. That could push anyone down into the second round. And once you get there, it's kind of a crapshoot. So I really don't think the range is as bad as maybe it seems when you just first think about it.
I love that pick, though. I do. And again, you're going to understand the reason why we leaned into it. It's just because, again, we're picking like Terez. We're building a team like Terez. So we're thinking of our exceptionally talented quarterback who is a little bit smallish. So we're going to protect the living hell out of this guy. I'll take the tackles. So we took Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern, Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. Skoronski for us, we figured falls in that 11 to 20 range. Darnell Wright falls in that 21 to 32 range. So we effectively used 2 first-round picks, 2 top 3-tier picks on offensive linemen to try, along with obviously our tight end, to protect our quarterback. Skoronski was interesting, obviously out of Northwestern, because I know he's got the short arms. Everyone puts him in the percentile of the short arms, and nobody's the sub 33-inch arms, like it's hard to find a good comp. Rashawn Slater had 33% arms. I think that was like 28th percentile. Clearly a good NFL tackle. Okay. Like if he can stay healthy. The thing I liked about Skoronski was everybody said something good about him. There was a wide variance of where they believed he could actually play on the line. Some people were tackle, some people were guard. I even heard a center in there. But I love that. I actually love that. I'm like, okay, great. If he's, let's say it's a good team, you pick him in the first round, you don't really want to play him as a backup. But the great thing about having him as a backup depth pick in year 1 as a rookie, anybody who gets hurt on your line, you might be able to plug him in and actually play him there. He could play a guard. He could play a center. He could play a tackle. Could it be the difference between being a good tackle or an elite guard? Maybe. It could be. I keep hearing the Zach Martin played at Notre Dame at tackle, obviously comes to the NFL, perennial all Pro Bowl, all pro guard for the Dallas Cowboys. If that's the difference that you're looking at with him, I could see him settling in at guard. For me, I think on our team, at least initially, we're going to try him at tackle. We'll see how it ultimately works out. But I love someone who can play all over the place. You're the one who really brought Darnell Wright to the table for that other tackle pick. And I love it because he is a tackle. Like me, like you said, lab guy, built in the lab, which is sort of how people are going to say, well, Skoronski, why not Paris Johnson, right? They're going to say Paris Johnson. But I wanted at least one of these tackles to have that flexibility. Wright, though, which was your pick, really fits in, I think, and he just anchors in at tackle. That's where you're ultimately going to have him, right?
He played right tackle last year for Tennessee, but he played left tackle in the past. And in an offense like Tennessee, there is no shortage of pass blocking repetitions for you to see of what he can do out there. And honestly, I gotta say, I keep asking around and looking at mock drafts and talking to media people too, and it seems like he's gonna end up like as a back half of the first round pick. And when I watch his tape, man, I just see someone who's a lot more special than that. To be 6'6", 335, the way he moves, I mean, he finished out as the combine as one of the best athletes we've seen at offensive tackle. I think it translates to his tape. He's got good technique. I think, when you're looking at offensive line, like you're just trying to check off boxes of what guys have, and he's got just about everything you would look for. And the versatility, along with Skoronski, I think it gives us flexibility moving forward. So I really like Darnell Wright. He's one of my favorite players in the whole class, and I think if anyone who is able to get him in like pick 20 at 32, that's going to be a long time steal for them.
If you could put Wright and Washington next to each other in whatever, that's like 650 pounds. I mean, it's like literally.
Wait till we get to our guard pick. We're moving people off the ball on the right side, man.
Exactly. All right. I'll tell you what, I will give you the 3 interior offensive line we chose. I want you to pick your favorite of the trio. We took Osiris Torrance out of Florida, Chandler Zavala out of North Carolina State, and Oluwatimi out of Michigan. And just so you understand where the slotting was, Osiris Torrance, the 21 to 32 pick slot, which means we now spent three first round picks, 3 of 6 tier 1, 2, 3 first round picks on 2 tackles and an interior offensive lineman. That shows you our dedication to protecting our quarterback. Oluwatimi, we slated bottom of the 3rd. And then Chandler Zavala, we said somewhere in the 5th round mix. Just pick your favorite out of that trio.
I mean, my favorite is Osiris Torrance. I think he's an incredibly clean guard prospect. Transferred from Louisiana Lafayette to Florida, started all the games last year. And dude, he's just a tank. Like, I don't know a way to describe him, but just absolute tank. I know he didn't have like a super great combine. I think he finished as just like, between a 60 and a 70% percentile athlete based on relative athletic scores. But you just got to watch him play, man. He's a people mover. Doesn't get pushed around in pass pro. I think his feet are pretty good, even with his combine not being great. And, you're talking about a guy who's 335 pounds, 330 pounds that is just moving people off the line of scrimmage consistently. Even in the SEC, like he's got some great battles against Georgia's defensive line, which has put out, as we know, a ton of NFL players of the last 2 seasons. I think he's really as clean as they get from a guard standpoint, which kind of helps us with the Chandler Zavala pick because he's just, one of those guys that's a top 1% athlete, super, super freak athlete, but isn't quite as refined. So I think we kind of need the steadiness on the right side. Right.
Yeah.
Don't watch Zavala versus Tyree Wilson if you're a fan of him. That's what I'll say.
work to be done. Oluwatimi, by the way, too. I mean, just not the sexiest pick in the world, but he was a really good, solid transfer portal guy for Michigan. Super long resume. Started a ton of games in college. I liked him a lot because, Michigan, I actually talked to somebody at the University of Michigan, and I mean, he was just the quintessential glue guy for them, really anchored the line, brought the group together, had a little bit of nastiness to him. And it was a fantastic line all in all. Like I said, not a super sexy pick, but I think, centers typically aren't. You just want to get a good one and someone you can put in there for a good decade. And that's great. And that's actually how one evaluator kind of described him. We'll flip over to defense. Edge. I'll tell you what, I want you to, we'll have you tackle the edge guys because this was your brainchild between these 2 guys. And I think they're the longest breakdowns.
They're definitely the longest posts.
yeah. There's some explaining to go on here. So Kalijah Cancey, which he slots in at D-line / edge out of Pittsburgh. Will McDonald, edge out of Iowa State. Let me give you the slotting in terms of where we kind of see those guys. Bottom of 2nd for Will McDonald, and then top of 2nd for Kalijah Cancey. So we're really looking at 2 edge guys coming off in that 2nd round.
Okay. I'm going to nerd out for a second because I played defensive line in college. I coached for a year in Maryland while I was trying to figure out my life. So I feel like this is a part of the game that I know a lot about. It's my favorite guys to watch. So I put Kalijah Cancey down as an edge. I think that's where you need to start first because he's a guy who definitely primarily played defensive tackle in college, but I just don't think that's where he's going to thrive in the NFL. It's different than like where Aaron Donald was coming out of Pittsburgh to me, because with Aaron Donald, like he was one of those rare guys who's, 6 feet, 285, but doesn't rely on like 100% penetration to get the job done. Like he's going to be someone that can anchor against a double team, against a center and a guard, which is truly, truly unique for someone of that size. And Cancey's a good football player, don't get me wrong, but I think his projection is a little bit different when you're talking about how he might stand up against NFL guards. Honestly, as I was watching him, I kept thinking of Melvin Ingram, who played some defensive tackle at South Carolina, but played more at time of the edge than Cancey did at Pittsburgh. So when I was watching Cancey, I ended up looking at a picture of Melvin Ingram from South Carolina, and they're actually built pretty similar, like smaller upper bodies, but explosive in the lower half. And I think that when you look at how Cancey's built, you usually just don't see guys with like that kind of wingspan. And that wingspan at that weight, 280 pounds, right, just bullying NFL interior offensive linemen. But I started thinking about, well, let's see, like, if Cancey can be someone that goes on the edge. First of all, he's got the combine traits to do it. I mean, he ran one of the fastest three-cone times, which is what you're looking at in terms of guys who are going to be rushing off the edge. That three-cone drill is kind of indicative of how well you can get around an offensive tackle and close and make a sack. He ran a 7 seconds on the dot at 280 pounds, which is really, really, really crazy. He ran a 4.640. And then when you kind of watch the tape, and there are some plays where he gets flipped out to defensive end, he can actually, cut his hips and get around a tackle and close on the quarterback. And I think there are also plays where you can look at it where he plays defensive tackle and, there's something called like a two-way go where basically you're lined up on the guard and the center and the tackle are both occupied. So you're one-on-one against the guard. And in that situation, you can kind of create a little bit of space for yourself. And I think when he is able to get guards to like move their feet and lunge at him, he's got the hips and the ankles and the explosion to get past them. So those are the plays that made me think, when he's isolating space a little bit, that he can play edge. Because I don't really see him having a super fruitful career at defensive tackle in the NFL. It's not Aaron Donald. It's not the same player.
I do like the role guys, though. The guys that you can move inside and out. I mean, is he going to be Chris Jones? No. But I mean, no. I do like the flex. Look, give your defensive coordinator some matchup flexibility, fine.
Right.
Hey, if the guard's weak, we'll roll him inside. We'll figure out the proper gap for him to attack. If the edge is weak, I love that. To me, flexibility on the NFL level is so prime.
Yeah. And then, on third down, he can be just a chess piece that you put all over the place. But I think just like for structure of defense and for his own sake, I think edge on the early downs is probably where it's probably where he would have the most success. And then Will McDonald, like I say this, like what they did to this guy was just unfair in college. It made no sense. So like Big 12 defenses, they play a lot of what's called like mint and tight fronts, where you have it's basically a smaller kind of odd front defense where you have a lot of safeties and maybe a linebacker or two on the field, but you still have a nose and then two positions that are called a 4-eye, which is basically you're lined up on the inside of the tackle. Will McDonald was playing on the inside of an offensive tackle at 240 pounds last year at Iowa State. And I mean, it's just what 240 pounders taking on double teams at a Division I level and honestly having a whole lot of success at that. There aren't too many guys, but he was asked to do that at a pretty consistent level. So I think when you look at him, he's a traits guy. You get to see the work where he does actually get to move out against tight ends and play on the edge. And I think a lot of his traits translate. He just was in a bad spot based on how Iowa State likes to play defense. So that's my spiel on Cancey and McDonald. I think they're both kind of interesting guys, but you need a little bit of explanation because when you watch them play, that's not the spots that they're going to flourish at in the NFL, I don't think.
Yeah, I like that, though. I like adding, players to the team and fitting them into spots where we naturally see them existing in the NFL, even though you might not necessarily understand the slotting initially. I think it's a good description. Okay, let's move to interior defensive line. With Gervon, Dexter, interior defensive line at Florida. Mazi Smith, interior defensive line at Michigan. Smith was more my pick. Big guy, 6'3", 323. Not a finished product, but amazing short area quickness. Definitely, he's a freak skill guy, and he brings that to the table. But he definitely needs some polish. I sometimes lean in the Michigan guys when on this team the last couple of years because Terez loved Michigan. He's a Michigan fan, and so I probably I went to Michigan State, so it's not necessarily my first instinct is to lean into the Michigan guys, but again, just the athleticism that he has. He did have, and this kind of gave me a pause. He had a now resolved misdemeanor concealed weapons charge. I talked to a couple teams about that. They said they were actually pretty satisfied with what his explanation was, that he had filed for paperwork for it. You can think what you want about whether or not people should be having concealed and carry. I grew up in Michigan. I will be honest with you, it's not uncommon in the state of Michigan. That's on you to decide how you feel about it. I was not going to disqualify him simply for that, especially after teams said they did the backgrounding on it and they felt pretty good about it.
My family's from the South, man.
Well, I live in Texas.
I'm not bugging too much about that.
Yeah, I live in Texas, and basically we're at the point in Texas where they don't even want you to have a permit. It's just you just walk around with it, like it doesn't just carry.
Yeah.
So just assume everybody in Texas is carrying. It's a different world in some other places, but again, I'm not going to nick him for it because I grew up in Michigan. I know I'm like, this is not uncommon. You can decide whether or not you think you want a young man on your football team wanting to carry a sidearm. But once again, though, he does have he has that size, 323 run stopping. When you look at him, you're like, that's sort of the run stopper you put in the middle. But his quickness is something that when you kind of project it out, he can be more. There's no doubt. He needs refinement in his technique. I think he needs a good defensive line coach, maybe, some creative scheming. But I do think for an interior lineman, he can be a heck of a lot more. You like that Dexter?
Yeah, I like Dexter, and I like Mazi Smith and Dexter pairing, especially like just looking at our defensive line. We need Mazi Smith because we need someone who is just going to be our anchor. I think we would look at Cancey and McDonald. Those guys are more up the field kind of guys. And Dexter, he probably profiles as that a little bit too. Dexter is one of those guys where he's just all-world athlete, and then you watch him play, it's like, why isn't this clicking in the same way that it should? He's got a lot of plays where, he looks like there are a lot of plays where I would close my eyes and say, that's Chris Jones. That I just watched Chris Jones do something crazy right there. But he does this weird thing where he's laid off the snap a lot, which I think is correctable. But there's to me, there's a reason, like when you ask around about him, the opinions range from all over the place. I think people who just like traits might have him at the top of the second round. People who want something a little bit more refined might have him at the top of day 3, like in round 4. So I think that this is a good spot for him. I would say that Dexter is going to be a guy that I think he's going to have a lot of fans among defensive line coaches on draft day and draft weekend, because, there's always going to be the guy who says, I can fix him. I can fix him. And it's hard to find guys who are 6'6", 300 pounds and run a 4.8. So I like the upside with Dexter, but he's still got a ways to go.
So Dexter, we slotted him at the bottom of the 3rd. Smith, we slotted him at the top of the 2nd. So somewhere between the 1st and the 16th pick in the 2nd. Moving on to linebacker. I laugh because this was the...
All right, moving on to safety.
Basically, right. Moving on to safety. Linebacker was a it was an interesting swing. We'll put it that way. If you weren't getting your linebacker early in the draft, you had to basically pick them up high or punt on the position. And punt in a way, when I say punt, you just go for let's pick some guys that maybe you get really late, but they got some traits. You can develop them. You can really hope that they come together on the NFL level. Later in the draft, we end up getting some of these guys, and you just sort of hope that they round into something at the NFL level. We had Isaiah Land out of Florida A&M, Aubrey Miller out of Jackson State, so 2 HBCU players, and then D Winters out of TCU. And what's interesting about these guys is when you look at where we kind of had them slotted, Aubrey Miller was the priority free agent guy that had all these arguments over the place. D Winters we had in the 7th round, and Isaiah Land we had in the 6th round. So 6th, 7th, and priority free agent for our linebacking core. Not necessarily ideal, but Terez set this up. You're going to get in a pinch, and this is one of those ones where we definitely felt how he structured it in picking these players.
I think we also felt this linebacker class in a very, very heavy way, because I mean, when I was going through the list of guys just to watch, I really, really like Drew Sanders from Arkansas, but we decided to go in different spots because I think he's probably going to be a top half of the second round guy. And we decided to go with different positions there. And outside of like Drew, there's Jack Campbell from Iowa, who's kind of solid. I think he's a starter. And outside of like, once you get past those two, it really falls off a cliff. So I think that our selections here, they speak more about the class than anything else. It's not really a sexy group of linebackers. And I think that I don't think we're going to see too many drafted, like even on day two, really. If Drew Sanders sneaks into the first round, that might be one, but it's not really a pretty linebacker class.
Yeah. I mean, like, and here's the thing about all these guys. Winters is small, 5'11", 227. Miller, another guy, 5'11". I mean, not a ton of athleticism for Aubrey Miller. But he was somebody, if you went and you watched him at the Senior Bowl, he could tackle. There's no question. I mean, he was definitely a tackling machine. So you're looking for something. Let's bring something ultimately to the table. And then Isaiah Land, who we had coming off in the 6th. So again, Land in the 6th, Winters in the 7th, and Aubrey Miller as the priority free agent. Land was a guy who had a monster junior season, probably, could have gone into the portal. There was talk about him maybe going to an SEC team for his last year out of Florida A&M. He's 6'3", 236, so projecting more of like an outside linebacker type in whatever scheme. You're not going to, he's not going to be in a typical defensive end type with that body. I mean, now some teams kind of thought, hey, he could be a player that ultimately gets to like 260 on the NFL level, a 265, and we can make him into an edge. But that's definitely a project. So that's basically where we came at the linebacker spot. So secondary, let's do secondary in a straight shot. We took Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. He was our top 10 pick out of the secondary. We took Starling Thomas out of UAB, Alabama, Birmingham. Thomas was in the 6th round for us, very much a developmental guy. And then our other corner, we took Kansas State's Julius Brents. The 2 safeties, again, this was more of a you had to kind of split the baby on this one in terms of the potential developmental part of it. Iowa, Caevon Merritweather, we have in the 7th round, and then Georgia safety Chris Smith in the 5th round. So a little bit lower. We're on the safeties. Give me your best out of that entire secondary. Who's the guy that I know don't say Gonzalez. I mean, we all know Gonzalez. I guess you can say Gonzalez.
Yeah. But, I mean, Gonzalez is easy.
Gonzalez is easy. Give me a not so easy guy.
Chris Smith, I think, from Georgia. I know I rep my teams hard, or whatever.
Man, you do.
Look, back-to-back national championships, best defensive college football 2 years in a row. There's going to be some good football players on that. Chris Smith, I to me, more so than maybe some of the other guys, I think he hits like all 3 points on the All Juice team: effort, attitude, and performance. Because he's a guy. It's not like he was the most touted recruit coming out, especially considered to the amount of stars that the Georgia defense usually has. But he worked his way up into the starting lineup and became like a pretty key secondary player for them. Especially as they transitioned from like that 2021 defense that had the 5 first-rounders to 2022 defense, which is still good, but wasn't quite on the same level. He became a really important player for that defense. And, you look at the athletic profile, not that big, not the fastest guy. I think he ran like in the mid 4.6s at the combine. But then you just watch him play and you see like how important he is to the actual success of their defense. Plays all over the place, from free safety, strong safety, slot cornerback. He's a hitter. He was one of the leading tacklers on the team. He actually racked up his interception game this year after only having, I think, 1 or 2 last year. So, he's kind of one of those guys who had to get to a big school and really grind it out. But he found a starting spot at safety, and I think he ended up being a really key contributor to that defense. And to me, all of that put together makes him a good candidate for the All Juice team.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think that's great. I went with Starling Thomas, the UAB kid, and I mean, like, he's on the edge of sub 4.3 40. Okay, and when you talk to the team, like, he's a late round flyer. Teams like the teams that like him, like the fact that he's got this ability to burst and close in the middle of a route. There's a lot of work to be done. Okay, so I don't know if necessarily his change of direction is going to be good enough, but there's all kinds of different things that they'll ultimately have to work on with him. But I'm sorry, if you have 4.28 speed, and by the way, he's not small, he's 5'10", like he's not big, but 5'10", 4.28 to 4.3. Okay, first thing a team says is, let's start and see if we can work with that, because that's something that you absolutely can't teach. Maybe he's just a track athlete, and can't make that transition. But for a late round pick at corner, that is a hell of a skill set to start working with. And again, no, this is not banging on UAB here, but teams typically, when they look at schools like UAB and some HBCUs and things like that, they think, okay, well, look, we have the coaching level gets better at the NFL. It gets better from Power 5 schools, but especially schools that don't necessarily have the assets to pour into weight room training, 50 million staff members. It's just the reality that when you start to take players from smaller schools, you think maybe there's definitely more development we can get out of this versus in Alabama, where you're like, they've already given these players more than we can at the NFL level. Right. Maybe it's the opposite. We don't know how much more there was really left in the tank. So I really like Starling Thomas as a guy to just sort of see how he develops. Before we close it out, when you look at the late round, and I'm going to go ahead and leave it pretty wide open here. So 3rd day pick, 4th to the 7th. What's your favorite player picked 4th to the 7th round that you really like and you're kind of excited to see where the pick goes?
I think it's another kind of meathead pick for me, but Zavala from NC State. I just think he's really intriguing as a late round developmental kind of offensive lineman, as just like a general draft strategy. Like, once you get into day 3, you're probably not really going to find too many players. So you might as well just draft the athletic freaks and see if you can coach them up into being something. And I think that Zavala, he's got all the traits you want, and, didn't perform like the best against super top competition, but he's got like the baseline traits you need to be an NFL starter. I'm kind of excited to see where he ends up. I think he's the guy, if he ends up with a good offensive line coach, could actually be a long-term starter in the NFL.
Yeah. Okay. I like that one. I'm going to go with a little bit of the homer pick just because I got a chance to see him play live in college a lot. And then I also saw him at the Senior Bowl, just as I said, chew guys up and spit him out. I like Tank Dell if he comes off in the 4th round and beyond. I know he's small, 5'8", 160 was probably what he played at Houston. Maybe he ends up playing, you can get him to 170 at the NFL level. My thing is, it feels like the NFL is trending toward the smaller receivers anyway. The way that the offense is starting to evolve, you can get some of these players more involved. And so you'll see special trait, quote unquote, smallish receivers will have a chance in the NFL maybe in years past that they didn't. His 10-yard split was 1.49 seconds. He's a night. I mean, you don't want this guy one-on-one. You just don't. I stood there and watched the Senior Bowl, and I'm like, man, this is embarrassing. Like, this guy is. And then when you would watch him at Houston, he was a pop player. He popped. Anytime you watched, you're like, who the hell is one? Like, this guy's always open. Like, he's always getting behind defenses. It's just, I think he has a set of special traits to him in terms of that quickness that nowadays you get him in the hands of the right offensive mind, the right coordinator. I think as I don't want to say limited usage player, but a role player, you can definitely get some really big plays out of him and splash plays, I think, even. So I really liked him in the 4th round. Might be a little bit stretching in terms of the late round pick, but it is day 3. So
it's day 3 and he's 160 pounds. Come on.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So that's the team. Hopefully people enjoy it. Again, this is just sort of a brief recap of it. We're going to have the whole rollout of the full team. Check it out on sites. We hope that Terez would have appreciated this one. It was, I really hope he would have appreciated how difficult it was to piece this team together, because it was, man, this was a heck of a trudge, just getting people to agree on some some different guys. And some of you will probably hate guys on this team, and that's okay.
But like I said, go back to my disrespectful rant if you're feeling that way, you know?
Yeah, definitely go back to Charles' disrespectful rant. So that's it. We hope everybody enjoyed it. Again, check out breakingtea.com. These new t-shirts are dope. I have yet to get my sweatshirt yet. I'm going to get that next. But I love them. I think they're crisp, look really good. And as always, just remember those proceeds, they go to a great place, help to carry on Terez's legacy at Howard University, that scholarship. Very, very important for us to make sure we keep working at keeping that funded over the years. So any help with that would be really, really appreciated. And if you get them before the draft, wear them for the draft. Like, there was a pretty good thread going a couple years back of everybody wearing their all juice tees. You can wear the classic, you can wear the updated one. Either way, I think it's always fun on draft day to see guys break those out. So, Charles, I had a great time doing this with you. I apologize for calling you late one night when you were with your girl, and I had to interrupt you to beat you up on some names. But
it's okay. We finished The Sopranos this past weekend, so we're all good.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. And give us the feedback. As always, we'll be back on Wednesday. Jory Epstein will be back on the show.
Wow.
She's been MIA for a while now, but Jory's coming back in the fold. Yeah, a few weeks. Jory's coming back in the fold, so we'll have her on Wednesday. You can get CMAC on Twitter at 4verts. You can get myself at Charles Robinson. You can get Stone Rochelle, our ace producer, at SJ Rochelle. Once again, remember, help us keep Terez Paylor's legacy alive. Go to breakingtea.com/Terez for the new all juice tee or hoodie. And you can support that scholarship at Howard University through that purchase or directly, as well as the one in his name at Power Mizzou, if you just check out our podcast description. In terms of our in-house, check out our new NBA podcast, Ball Don't Lie, featuring Vinny Goodwill, Jake Fisher, and Dan Devine, as well as our new MLB podcast, Bandwagon, featuring Hannah Kaiser and Zach Kreiser, both available wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review, tell a friend, pass it on, bring new people into the family. We will see you on Wednesday. Peace.